Unplug it on chunks with the gangster battle. Leave your nines at home and bring your skills to the battle.
Verzuz is now in transition mode, big time. Rather than you just playing your song with you and your opponent in a small little studio, it's coming to a point where you're having to perform your song. So it's almost like if the consensus was that you had a better song in this round than your opponent, let's say it sold more, it was more popular, the beat was fresher and the lyrics were fresher. If you can't perform it as well as you recorded it, then your opponent can perform his less popular song, and if he can perform it well, he could win that round. Or at least bridge the gap. Fat Joe is not the worst MC, but he's an opportunist and you can't blame a man for that. But when he came out with Flow Joe in the early 90s, and the first time I heard him was on that Diamond D album, Stunts, Blunts and Hip Hop. And he certainly wasn't the most articulate MC out there. And even when he did Flow Joe, he did his best, and songs like Represent. But he was never the best of the New York MCs in his era. He was never the best. He made improvements, but even on songs like I Shot Ya, LL song where he featured with Keith Murray, Prodigy, and Foxy Brown, I would vote all of their verses over his. A couple more features he was on in that era. He was on a feature with a group called Strictly Roots, with Grand Puba. And to me, Puba and Strictly Roots were better MCs, better flow, better voices, better delivery. I would also have Apache and Cool G Rap getting the better of Joe on.
You must be out your fucking mind, man.
Which was Fat Joe's single, and they were featuring on it. Although Joe did better in that one, I think. Then when Pun came, that revived his career, obviously. And the Don Cartagena album, we started to hear improvements. Like, I love that gangster shit. That's my joint, produced by Primo. Joe knows how to make rap songs now. His flow's tighter, and the work is more cohesive. And he's never looked back since then. He's never looked back. But even from then, what was that, late 90s, he's never been a top 5 MC. Ja Rule was probably a little undersold and a little underrated going into this battle because of his back and forth with 50 Cent. And in the battle, Fat Joe's shortcomings resurfaced. He's never had the best voice for an MC, in my opinion, and he had pitching issues, breath control issues. Chris Gaban said horrible stage presence, and I'd agree with that too. Ja Rule, just better breath control on his bars, better pitch. At times he'd done his growling style, and then he'd do the lower pitch style, and he varied it up on whatever songs. His ad-libs, whoever was doing them, they seemed a bit more natural. And the man's got a catalogue of hits. Has a catalogue of hits. Ja just looked way more comfortable up there than Joe did, in all truth. I think Joe was just trying too hard to be hard. You know, when Joe called for an intermission, I wouldn't say it was submission, but it made him look like he had to re-strategize and rethink what he was doing. He came back with a change of outfit, but that didn't help him. Ja Rule wisely picked up on the fact that the Locks and Dipset didn't have no intermission and that Joe was feeling the heat. He pointed it out. You know, rule number one, not rule number one, but a rule MCs need to know in a battle is you have to know who you are, know yourself, know your format, what made you successful, and own it. This is an issue that Joe Budden never resolved through his career when he broke out with Pump It Up. That's another story though. So when Joe tried to play on the fact that Ja Rule was singing a lot of his songs, you know, the hooks and in verses and whatnot, but he owned it. He said, yeah, I'm the singing rapper of all the classic hits. Yeah, you're getting smoked by the sings, Joe. You know what I mean? And like, that didn't work from Joe. See, he tried to play off what 50 Cent used against Ja Rule in their back and forth, that he sings a lot in the songs, but what 50 was accusing Ja Rule of, they was accusing 50 of, singing in a lot of his hooks. I think 50 explained it to a degree. He said, well, the difference is that 50 was more doing what you would call rap singing. It's not exactly singing, but Ja Rule was trying to hit notes in some of his songs and stuff like that, like he was a real singer. I think there is a little difference between what him and 50 was doing, but 50 was singing too. Let's not get too sidetracked on it, but you know, like there's always been melodies from Cold Crush brothers when they used to do the routines, and rappers used to do that mock singing, you know, like Bismarcky, you got what I need, or Eric Sermon, I'll be gentle, I'll be very gentle, you know, that type of singing. And I think 50 was more leaning to that side of it. But, you know, it was just that era, I guess, where everyone was looking for the melodic hooks, especially post-Snoop Dogg era. And when Joe got into some singing shit in the Verzuz, Jar said, oh, you singing? You singing? And like, you know, he got him. So that didn't work. The synergy between Ja Rule and his DJ, you know, just a simple little theme where Ja's DJ was dropping that cut from Jay-Z's You Can't Knock the Hustle. And the DJ kept throwing that little cut before Ja started his songs. It's subtle, but that's, you know, his signatures, it can put a subtle little signature on his performance. And these things are important. The Lox's DJ worked better with the Lox than the Dipset's DJ worked with them. And these things are important. It's not just about the songs now. It's the interpolation of the songs on stage now. Fat Joe actually used the same DJ that the Lox used, but good move. It didn't come off the same way, I guess. Joe playing Pun's Still Not a Player. I was like, oh, no, Joe, no, come on, man. Saying that you wrote the record or you produced it, no. It was a bad move from him because it just reinforced who most people thought was more talented, Pun or Joe. And you know what I'm going to say. When they were bringing out their features, like one guy, I think, sung a hook on one of Joe's songs, and Remy came out. And the difference between Joe and Ja brought out Little Mo and Vita for Put It On Me. And Joe caught some flack because, you know, he critiqued their appearances. And, you know, as they're ladies, it's not going to go down too well. And as they were black ladies, a lot of black people didn't like what he had to say. You know what I mean? I think he apologized, but he didn't go there. And Ja pulled him up. Oh, you disrespected the ladies, Joe? Surprised at you. They both had Ashanti out there. They both done songs with her. You know what I mean? I think Ja had a few more songs with her. And obviously, What's Love, all three of them were on there, so all three of them performed that. But the thing was, like, when Remy came out, it did appear that she was kind of saving Joe more than enhancing Joe. Whereas when Little Mo was singing that hook and singing with Ja, there was like chemistry there. Like it was enhancing what Ja was doing. It was taking him up another level. And when Joe and Remy performed Twins, Remy was doing Big Pun's part, and she started doing all the I rub your face off the earth and curse your family children like Amityville. I drill the nerves in your cavity filling. And she done it really good. And it just, in my mind anyway, it just made Joe look like, oh man, like you were nowhere near as good as Pun. And even hearing Remy recite it, it's just like, you know what I mean, like, it just weren't a good outing for him. A lot of people, you know, they're saying, well, what is Verzuz about? Isn't it supposed to be about the songs rather than performance? Well, you see, this is what's lost on a generation of people these days, is performance used to be a vital component of being an artist. It separates the studio artist from the all-round artist. Joe was obviously inspired by what he saw Lox do to Dipset, especially Jada. He came out in the army suit, tried to do a freestyle over the Mobb Deep beat. And, you know, at least he got his words off where Cam didn't even get his words off when he tried that freestyle or whatever he was doing. But where was Jadakiss bodied Biggie's Who Shot You beat? Joe on the Mobb Deep Shook Ones beat, I think it was? No. Just, you know, he needed ad-libs to do a freestyle. Come on, man. It's crazy. You know what I mean? For some artists, performing live is a chore. But for other groups, soloists, like, they try and take it to a next level. Like the Improvisionists, they might do versions of the song that are not on the 12 or not on the album, especially the jazz musicians and stuff, and some rappers. I don't want to keep hammering Fat Joe's performance, but when it came to I got 100 guns, 100 clip, going to New York, and for those who don't know, KRS-One, he made the original version of that song on the Edutainment album. Like, of all people to pull out, they pulled Jada, who is the golden boy after that demolition job that he and the Locks did on Dipset. And it just punctuated Fat Joe's pitching and tuning issues when he raps. Like, he grabs the, you know what I mean? And like, them guys sound like they're in the recording booth. Like, Jada is so natural. It's like incredible at times. Ja Rule, he was on his game as well. And you see, when they have the ad-libs, it enhances their verses and they're subtle. But with Joe, it's kind of like, I need the ad-lib because I ain't got the breath to follow the whole verse through. And even though it was never going to spill out into anything toxic, you know, they've made a lot of money together through their careers and they made a lot of money tonight. I felt Fat Joe tried to switch it up when he knew it was lost. I love you, Rule, man. Let's be cool. It's all love and all that. Because he knew it was lost, so he couldn't really keep up the animosity, because you need animosity in a battle. Not like you want to kill the guy, but you need that animosity to impose your will. And that's what they were doing. But I felt when Joe knew it was lost, he wanted it to all be love and peace. Which is cool. And look, Ja Rule was not one of the best MCs, even in his prime, with them big hits. When I say he wasn't one of the best, I'm just talking about his pen. You know what I mean? His pen and his skill set. But he knew his format and he worked it very well. Fat Joe's story is one of perseverance. He kept going where a lot more talented MCs folded. And the fact that he's relevant enough to do a Verzuz in 2021, when he debuted in 1992 on Stunts, Blunts and Hip Hop, you gotta give him that for that. Digging in the Crates crew, R.I.P. Big L. I saw Big L perform just months before he died at the Subterranean, Ladbroke Grove, with OC. Now that's what you call a talent. Him and O. Like, they'd perform their songs and then L would say, yo, cut the music off. L wants to do his a cappella, and it'd just be some spiteful, spiked up punchline shit. Like, he would just nail it. He would just nail it and drive every single word home. Fat Joe was an integral part of Digging in the Crates, and don't let no one else tell you any different. He was an integral part. But, you know, he's in an era with Big L and OC, and like, OC was just pure heat. Pure heat. Time's Up. The Ozone. Bah, 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 bah. Yo. Like, there were debates about who had the best album out of Word Life and Illmatic. There were debates. Now, most people would go Illmatic, but Word Life was dope. OC. You had to be nice to be one of the best in the East Coast 90s. Fat Joe's in denial that he lost. That's none too surprising. Playing the Anti-Up remix because Remy had a verse on it. I don't know. Remy did her thing, but you didn't have a verse on the song. Remy did. And then playing Pun's Still Not a Player. Why? Because he had a production credit on it or something? Did he make the beat? I don't know. I don't know Fat Joe for making beats. And then he tried to compare himself to Diddy and Babyface, saying, yo, you know, if they have a Verzuz, they're going to be playing songs that they did or produced, but they didn't feature on. But their Verzuz would be a little different. They're not going into the Verzuz as purely MCs. They're going in there as moguls / producer artists. Fat Joe is known to most of us as being an MC. Now, if he'd got the instrumental of Still Not a Player and done a freestyle on it and pulled it off, that would have been better. But not just you rocking to Pun's tune and using that to try and score points in the Verzuz. No, that's a fail. That's a fail. He also said that, you know, he took the Verzuz on because people were scared to challenge Ja because he's got so many radio hits. Well, Ja Rule has more radio hits than KRS-One. But how would he do against KRS-One? He'd get crushed. KRS-One would flatten him. It's not a matter of hardcore or commercial. It's being accomplished at whatever genre you maneuver in. You know, guys like Redman, he's not really a radio guy. Could Ja Rule beat Redman in the verses? No, he couldn't. You know, what about Cannabis? Cannabis, what radio shit does he have? Some of the joints he done with Wycliffe, I guess, Gone to November, a few features. He doesn't have no radio shit. But if he was to gather up all the freestyles he's done on radio and mixtapes, he wouldn't even have to go to his LP. He could just use his freestyles and do serious damage, not just to Ja Rule, but to most MCs out there. Whether they got platinum LPs and a catalogue of hits, they'd be struggling. Ja Rule didn't produce any spectacular wordplay or anything like that. No, he didn't. He just had better cardio, better presentation. He looked more comfortable up there. He didn't have the pitching and tuning issues that Joe had. And that's how he got over. Joe's made a few gal tune in his time, and he's pulled it off. You know, the big guys want to compete with the likes of a LL or a Nelly or a 50 or a Cock Diesel and say, yeah, well, they can scoop up the honeys and blow their back out too and get busy. One of his best performances on a radio record, I think, was We Thuggin' with R. Kelly. He smoked that. Joe did his thing on that one. But he's still not as slick with the gal tune as Biggie or Heavy D. Still not quite there. But he does his thing. And Ja was hammering him when it came to catering for the female audience. He hammered him. And he held his own with the street bars as well. Joe lost. He lost. He knows he lost. I tell you what, I'd rather hear Fat Joe on a Verzuz than Jeezy or Gucci Man. Oh my. I tell you what, one MC, an East Coast great, one of my favorite MCs, I'm not going to say no more than that. He took the post down on Twitter, but after he listened to the Jeezy Gucci Man Verzuz, I can't remember what he said, I'm trying to paraphrase it, but he needed to do something life-affirming to get his IQ levels back after listening to their ABC basic-ass bars. It was horrible. Like, a lot of people talk about the Jeezy Gucci Man Verzuz because Gucci Man said something disrespectful apparently to Jeezy, and that brought tension to the room. But what I remember it for was just garbage bars. I just had to, like, I don't know. Maybe it's a cultural thing. I can't listen to rap like that. I can listen to Fat Joe. I can't listen to rap like that.
Unplug it on chunks with the gangster battle. Leave your nines at home and bring your skills to the battle.